Hey guys, tonight we are diving headfirst into a river of gold, trekking across a sea of sand, and peering into the heart of one of history's most jaw-dropping displays of wealth and faith. Picture this, it's the early 14th century, and you're about to join the entourage of a king so rich. He makes today's billionaires look like they're still searching for loose change under the sofa cushions. We're talking about Mansa Musa of Mali and his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca. This isn't your average gap-year backpacking trip. Mind you, honestly, if you were actually on this caravan, with its thousands of people, tons of gold, and the brutal Saharan sun as your constant companion, you probably wouldn't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing on the sun-baked earth of Niani, the capital of the mighty Mali Empire, around the year 1324. The air hums with 1,000 blended noises, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the distant bleating of goats, merchants haggling in a flurry of Bambara, Soninka, and Arabic, and the melodic call to prayer drifting from the city's earthen mosques. Children, their laughter bright and sharp, chase each other through the sprawling marketplaces, their bare feet kicking up clouds of reddish dust. The buildings around you aren't the towering stone fortresses you might imagine from a European kingdom of this era. Instead, they are impressive. Organically shaped structures of banco, a sun-dried mud brick, cool and inviting against the West African heat. Don't let the humble materials fool you. This is the heart of an empire that controls more gold than you could possibly imagine. And there, holding court, perhaps not on a gilded throne in a stuffy hall, but more likely in a shaded pavilion, surrounded by his advisors, griots, and petitioners, is the man himself, Mansa Musa. His title, Mansa, simply means King of Kings or Emperor. He is robed in fine, locally woven cotton, perhaps dyed a deep indigo, and adorned with understated but undeniably precious gold. He carries himself with a calm dignity, a thoughtful expression on his face. This isn't a king who needs to shout to be heard. His power is as vast and as palpable as the Sahelian sky above. He ascended to the throne under rather intriguing circumstances. His predecessor, Mansa Abu Bakr Sekou, so the story goes, became obsessed with the idea of an ocean on the other side of the Atlantic. Historians still argue whether the tales of Abu Bakr Sekou's equipping a vast fleet of ships to explore the Atlantic are literal truth or a symbolic representation of a dynastic shift. Some accounts claim he personally led a second, larger expedition and was never seen again, thus passing the mantle to Musa. A quirky little footnote in history. Isn't it a king who perhaps sailed off the edge of the known world, leaving behind an empire overflowing with riches? The wealth of Mali is staggering, and it's primarily built on gold. The empire controls the Bambuk, Bouré, and Galam goldfields, some of the richest deposits in the world. Caravans laden with this precious metal, along with salt, a commodity often as valuable as gold in this arid region, traverse the Sahara, connecting West Africa to North Africa, the Middle East, and even Europe. Indeed, it's a well-documented historical fact that for centuries, a significant portion of the gold circulating in Europe and the Islamic world originated from West Africa, much of it passing through Malian hands. European cartographers would later depict Mansa Musa on their maps holding a massive gold nugget or a golden scepter, a testament to how far his reputation for wealth would travel. But it's not just about gold. It's about a well-organized state, a sophisticated system of trade and taxation, and a powerful military that keeps the peace across a territory larger than Western Europe. So, why would a king of such immense power and wealth decide to undertake a perilous journey of thousands of miles across one of the world's most formidable deserts? The Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, a sacred duty for all Muslims who are physically and financially able to undertake it. Mansa Musa was a devout Muslim, and the call to visit the holy cities of Mecca and Medina would have weighed heavily on his conscience. Imagine the royal advisors when he first announced it. "Your Majesty, a spiritual journey. Wonderful. Perhaps a quiet retreat to a local shrine." And Musa, stroking his beard. Yes, something like that. Just me. 60,000 of my closest friends, and a few metric tons of gold for, travel expenses. Beyond piety, there were likely other considerations. Such a grand procession would be an unparalleled opportunity to announce the Mali Empire on the world stage, to showcase its incredible wealth and sophisticated culture. It would facilitate diplomatic ties with other powerful Islamic states, like the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt. It would also attract scholars, architects, and artisans to Mali, particularly to burgeoning centers of learning like Timbuktu. Some whispers also suggest a deeper, more personal reason, a story that Musa may have accidentally caused the death of his mother, Kanku, and that this Hajj was an act of profound penance. Whether this is true or a later embellishment, it adds another layer to the man's complex motivations. The preparations would have been immense, a logistical ballet on an unprecedented scale. You're not just packing a suitcase and grabbing your passport, you're mobilizing a moving city. Think of the sheer amount of food and water required, the security arrangements, the diplomats, the scholars, the family members, and, of course, the gold. We're not talking a few chests here and there. We're talking about porters and camels laden with so much gold that it would literally bend the economies of entire cities he passed through. It was more than a pilgrimage, it was a statement, a golden exclamation mark on the map of the world. He wasn't just making it rain gold, he was preparing to become a human monsoon of precious metal. The sheer audacity of it, the supreme confidence, is something to behold. And you, well, you're about to get a front-row seat to the departure. So, there you are, perched metaphorically on a baobab branch, or perhaps a conveniently placed rooftop in Niani, trying to take it all in. The city, usually a thrumming hive of activity, is now a scene of organized chaos, a colossal human and animal river preparing to flow east. For weeks, no, months, the preparations have been escalating. You've seen officials with scrolls and serious expressions scurrying about, merchants fulfilling orders so large they probably thought all their holidays had come at once, and artisans working overtime, crafting everything from new leather saddles to gilded Korans. The sheer logistics are enough to make your head spin. Imagine trying to get 60,000 people through airport security today. Mansa Musa's caravan was like that, but with more camels and slightly less complaining about baggage fees. Probably. The numbers themselves are almost mythical. 60,000 souls, they say, though historians still argue about the exact number of participants in the Hajj caravan, with figures ranging dramatically in different accounts, making it difficult to ascertain the true logistical footprint. This isn't just Mansa Musa and his immediate family popping off for a spiritual getaway. This is a significant portion of his empire on the move. There are thousands of soldiers, their spear tips glinting in the sun, their shields painted with fierce symbols, not for conquest, but for protection on the long, vulnerable road. There's the royal court dignitaries in their finest robes, scholars clutching precious books, royal wives veiled and riding comfortably, and of course, the griots, the living libraries of Malian history and culture, ready to sing the praises of their Mansa and entertain the masses during the long evenings. Then come the civilians, merchants seizing the opportunity for safe passage and new markets, artisans, servants, cooks, and healers, and a sobering reality of the era, thousands of enslaved people, a vast column of human labor, tasked with carrying supplies, tending to animals, and bearing many of the heaviest burdens. Their presence is a stark reminder of the complexities and cruelties woven into the fabric of even the most dazzling empires. Amongst this sea of humanity are the animals' estimates speak of thousands upon thousands of camels, single-humped dromedaries, perfectly adapted for the desert journey ahead, laden with food, water, tents, and personal belongings, and the gold. Oh, the gold. Sources whisper of anywhere between 80 to 100 camels, each carrying around 300 pounds of pure gold dust. Alongside them, thousands of porters, strong young men, each reportedly carrying a golden staff weighing several pounds. They weren't just carrying spare change. Each porter with his staff was basically a walking ATM, though withdrawals were generally discouraged by guys with very pointy spears. The organization required is monumental. You see appointed leaders for each section of the caravan, like meticulous tour group operators from hell, ensuring their charges have what they need, or at least know where to complain if they don't. Scouts ride ahead, looking for water sources and suitable camping spots. Foragers search for any available grazing for the animals. The Mali Empire, it's crucial to remember, had a highly developed administrative structure, capable of marshaling resources and manpower on a truly imperial scale. This isn't some haphazard migration, it's a carefully orchestrated expedition, a testament to the empire's sophistication. The guy in charge of making sure everyone had enough water, a critical role in the arid lands to come, probably didn't sleep for about 3 years. His job title was likely Chief Hydration Overlord and Preventer of Mass Grumpiness. As the day of departure dawns, the air crackles with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. There are tearful farewells as families are separated, last-minute blessings sought, and the nervous shuffling of thousands of feet. Mansa Musa himself, after leading a final prayer in the Grand Mosque of Niani, mounts his finest stallion. He's not ostentatiously dripping in gold. His real display of wealth is the sheer scale of the entourage that follows him. One particularly charming, though perhaps embellished, quirky tidbit that circulated about his journey was the claim that every Friday, no matter where the caravan found itself, Mansa Musa would fund the construction of a new mosque. Imagine, a pop-up place of worship appearing in the middle of nowhere each week. Then, a horn blasts, deep and resonant. Drums begin to beat a steady, marching rhythm. The front of the column, a wave of cavalry and standard-bearers, slowly begins to move. It's like watching a glacier decide to go for a brisk walk. The sound is immense, the creak of leather, the jingle of harnesses, the lowing of camels, the murmur of thousands of voices, the thud of countless hooves and feet against the dry earth. It takes hours for the entire procession to snake its way out of Niani and onto the eastward track, likely heading towards the important trading post of Walata, a gateway to the Sahara. You watch them go, this river of humanity and gold, stretching for miles across the savannah. The dust they kick up hangs in the air long after the last stragglers have disappeared over the horizon. The initial leg of the journey will be through familiar, though still challenging, territory, the Sahel, that band of semi-arid land that borders the Great Desert. But you know, and they know, that the real test lies ahead. The Sahara, the Great Sea of Thirst. For now, though, an empire is on the move. A king is fulfilling a sacred vow, and the world, though it doesn't fully realize it yet, is about to hear the name Mansa Musa. The sheer ambition of it is breathtaking, a golden thread about to be woven into the vast tapestry of history. The landscape has been shifting subtly for days, the lush greens of the savannah surrendering to stubborn scrubland, and now, even that tenacity is fading. You feel it before you fully see it, a different quality to the air, drier, sharper, carrying the scent of infinite, ancient dust. Then, it's upon you, the Sahara, the Great Desert, an ocean of sand and rock that stretches out in every direction, seemingly endless, under a sky that feels impossibly vast. The last trees shrink into gnarled, thorny bushes and then vanish, leaving you in a world of stark, minimalist grandeur and brutal, uncompromising heat. Your skin, once accustomed to the balmy air of Niani, now feels like it's personally offended by the sun. You'd pay a king's ransom for a tube of SPF 5000 source, but alas, it's a few centuries too early for that particular miracle. The daily rhythm of the caravan transforms into a symphony of survival. Before dawn, while the desert air still holds a surprising, biting chill, the camp stirs. The sounds are muted at first. A cough here, the soft murmur of prayers there, the low groans of camels being coaxed to their feet. Then, the bustle of packing, the clatter of cooking pots, the calls of cameleers. You march as the sun begins its relentless climb, painting the eastern sky in hues of apricot and rose. The heat intensifies with terrifying speed. The sand underfoot, initially cool, soon radiates warmth, then scorching fire. You learn to watch the Tuareg guides, the legendary blue men of the desert, their faces veiled in indigo tagelmusts. This isn't just for protection against the sun and sand. It's a quirky but vital tradition, said to preserve moisture and even hold spiritual significance for these masters of desert navigation. They move with a quiet confidence that you can only envy, their eyes constantly scanning the horizon. Water becomes your obsession. Every sip from your water skin is precious, the liquid often warm and tasting faintly of goat leather. But it's life. The quartermasters, those unsung heroes of hydration, manage the supplies with iron discipline. Wells are infrequent, sometimes brackish, always a cause for communal relief and activity when reached. The trans-Saharan trade routes, it's a vital historical fact, were ancient arteries of commerce, punctuated by oasis towns that served as critical watering holes and resupply points for caravans just like yours. Without these oases, this journey would be utterly impossible. Food is monotonous, but sustaining dried dates, millet, perhaps some stringy, heavily spiced cured meat. Sometimes, an animal too weak to continue is slaughtered, and the rare taste of fresh meat, cooked over a dung fire, is a feast. The sheer sensory experience of the Sahara is overwhelming. During the day, the sun glares off the endless dunes, the light so intense you have to squint, your eyes aching. The silence can be profound, broken only by the rhythmic plodding of thousands of feet and hooves, the creak of saddles, and the whisper of the wind. Or, the wind can rise into a howling demon, whipping sand into your eyes, your mouth, your very soul. You might experience a sandstorm, a terrifying wall of churning brown that blots out the sun, forcing the entire caravan to halt, huddle, and wait. The air thick with suffocating dust. And the mirages. Oh, the cruel deceptions, shimmering lakes and lush palm groves appearing on the horizon, only to dissolve into heat haze as you approach. You start to suspect the Sahara has a rather twisted sense of humor, offering you a 5-star resort experience, only to reveal it's just more, well, sand. Yet, there's an undeniable, awe-inspiring beauty here too. When the sun finally dips below the horizon, it sets the western sky ablaze with colors you've never seen before: fiery oranges, deep purples, soft pinks, and then the stars. Oh, the stars. With no city lights to dim their glory, the night sky becomes a breathtaking tapestry of diamond dust. Constellations blaze with an impossible clarity, the Milky Way a shimmering river across the celestial dome. You lie on your mat, wrapped against the desert cold, and gaze upwards, feeling incredibly small, yet part of something immense and eternal. Historians still argue about the exact route Mansa Musa's caravan took across the Sahara, as detailed contemporary records of the precise path are scarce, forcing reliance on later accounts and geographic probabilities. But you imagine them, centuries ago, looking up at these very same stars, finding their way. The journey is a crucible. People tire, animals falter, the weak fall ill, and despite the best efforts of the healers, some are lost to the desert's unforgiving embrace. But there's also a deep camaraderie forged in shared hardship. Stories are told around meager campfires. Small acts of kindness ripple through the weary ranks. Mansa Musa himself, you hear, remains a figure of calm strength, his devotion unwavering, his presence a reassurance to the thousands following him. His faith, and theirs, is a palpable force, a conviction that this toil, this suffering, is a path to something sacred. You begin to understand that this pilgrimage isn't just a physical journey, but a profound test of spirit. Each sunrise is a small victory. Each sunset a promise of rest before another day of tramping through these sands of toil, under that magnificent, indifferent sky of stars. You start to suspect the camels are the only ones truly in their element here. They're probably having deep, philosophical discussions in camel language about the merits of different types of sand, while you're just trying to remember what a tree looks like. But still, you press on. Egypt is out there, somewhere, beyond the horizon. And then, one sweltering afternoon, after what feels like an eternity of dun-colored landscapes and shimmering heat hazes, a scout gallops back along the column, his voice hoarse but ecstatic. He's seen it. Not another cruel mirage, not a figment of a heat-addled imagination, but a distinct, dark green line on the far eastern horizon. The Nile, life, civilization. A wave of relief, so profound it's almost a physical blow, washes over the weary caravan. After months of seeing nothing but sand. Sand. And more sand. The sight of that verdant promise probably makes you want to kiss the first blade of grass you see. Though, you'd probably get some funny looks from the locals, who are likely wondering who these dust-caked apparitions are, emerging from the furnace of the western desert. As you draw closer, The transformation is astounding. The barren, rocky terrain gives way to fertile black earth, crisscrossed with irrigation canals. Date palms laden with fruit sway in a gentle breeze that actually feels cool. The air, thick with the scent of river water and growing things, is a balm to your parched lungs. You see fellahin, Egyptian peasants, working their fields, their movements timeless and rhythmic. They stop and stare, open-mouthed, as your seemingly endless procession of people, camels and horses, coated in the pale dust of the Sahara, materializes like a desert dream. News of your approach, of course, has already reached Cairo, the magnificent capital of the Mamluk Sultanate. Messengers, dispatched by Mansa Musa weeks ago, would have carried word of the impending arrival of the King of Mali and his golden entourage. Cairo. Even the name sounds exotic, powerful, and it is. It's a historical fact that in the 14th century, Cairo was one of the largest, wealthiest, and most dazzling cities on earth, a true jewel of the Islamic world, home to perhaps 500,000 souls. It was a bustling metropolis of towering minarets, grand mosques, sprawling palaces, and crowded labyrinthine bazaars. The Mamluk sultans, warrior slaves who had risen to become powerful rulers, had made it their opulent capital. As your caravan draws nearer, you begin to see the signs of its grandeur, the imposing citadel perched on a hill, the countless domes and spires piercing the skyline. The sounds alone are a shock after the desert silence, a cacophony of street vendors hawking their wares, donkeys braying, children shouting, craftsmen hammering, and the 5 times daily call to prayer echoing from innumerable mosques. Your entrance into the city is a spectacle that Cairenes will talk about for generations. Mansa Musa, now perhaps clad in richer robes of embroidered silk and fine linen, rides at the head of his procession. He's no longer just the desert survivor. He's the mighty emperor of Mali. The gold is less conspicuous now, much of it still packed away, but the sheer size and exotic appearance of your group are enough to stop the city in its tracks. People line the streets, their faces a mixture of awe, disbelief, and intense curiosity. They've seen wealthy merchants and powerful emirs before, but this is something else entirely. When word got out about just how much gold Mansa Musa's caravan was theoretically carrying, Cairo's merchants probably started hyperventilating into their papyrus ledgers. It's not every day a walking Fort Knox, or perhaps a mobile national treasury, strolls into town. The diplomatic dance begins almost immediately. You're escorted to specially prepared quarters, though quarters hardly does justice to the sprawling encampment that must be established to house 60,000 people. Mansa Musa himself is invited to the court of the reigning Mamluk Sultan, Al-Nasir Muhammad, a formidable ruler in his own right. There's a famous story about their first meeting. Protocol dictated that visitors, no matter how important, should kiss the ground before the Sultan. Mansa Musa, however, was a king, an emperor, and he balked at the idea, stating he would only prostrate himself before God. It was a tense moment. Historians still argue about the precise nature of the diplomatic relationship established between Mansa Musa and Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad, whether it was one of equals, or if subtle hierarchies were at play despite Musa's immense wealth. Eventually, a compromise was reached. Mansa Musa agreed to prostrate, but declared he was doing so for God alone, who had brought him to this land. After this initial, slightly awkward diplomatic tango, Mansa Musa, rolling into Cairo like the ultimate VIP, was initially a bit hesitant about the whole bowing to another ruler thing. It's like, I'm a big deal. You're a big deal. Can't we just fist bump and call it a day? Relations warmed considerably. Gifts were exchanged, with Musa, naturally, bestowing upon the Sultan and his court an amount of gold that left them speechless. The Malian presence in Cairo is an event. Your people, with their distinct West African attire, languages, and customs, become a source of endless fascination. A quirky, though perhaps not entirely surprising, tidbit is how the sudden influx of so many foreigners, particularly those with access to seemingly limitless funds, began to affect the local markets almost immediately. The Cairenes, renowned traders themselves, were eager to engage with these newcomers from the land of gold. Scholars from Musa's entourage sought out Cairo's famed libraries and madrasas, eager to exchange knowledge. For 3 months, Mansa Musa and his people would make Cairo their temporary home, a vibrant, overwhelming, and utterly unforgettable stop on the long road to Mecca. The desert was a trial of endurance. Cairo is a feast for the senses, a dazzling glimpse into another world, and a place where the golden river from Mali will truly begin to flow. That golden river you anticipated, it's now in full, spectacular flood, surging through the markets and palaces of Cairo with an almost unstoppable force. For 3 months, your Malian contingent, with Mansa Musa at its helm, transforms the economic landscape of this bustling metropolis. You watch as gold dust, nuggets, and elegantly crafted ornaments flow from Malian hands into those of eager Cairene merchants, scholars, officials, and even the bewildered poor who find themselves recipients of unprecedented charity. Mansa Musa didn't just make it rain gold in Cairo. He unleashed a golden monsoon. Local merchants probably had to hire extra staff just to count it all, and maybe a few extra donkeys to carry their newfound wealth home, their eyes wide with a mixture of glee and disbelief. The Mansa himself leads by example, his generosity becoming the stuff of legend almost overnight. He showers Sultan al-Nasir Muhammad and his courtiers with gifts so extravagant they beggar description. He purchases goods with a regal indifference to price, fine Egyptian textiles, illuminated manuscripts, scientific instruments, and exotic spices. He hires tutors, engages with theologians, and commissions works from local artisans. His entourage, from the highest noble to the more modest members of the 60,000-strong caravan, follows suit. They are, after all, representatives of the wealthiest empire in West Africa, and they have months of desert-suppressed purchasing power to unleash. You see them in the souks, the famed bazaars of Cairo, marveling at goods unseen in Niani, their own gold readily exchanged. A quirky little detail that emerges is how even the servants and lower-ranking members of Musa's retinue were reportedly so flush with gold that they'd tip with small nuggets for everyday services. Much to the astonishment of the locals, who were used to copper and silver for such transactions. Initially, this massive influx of bullion is a joyous bonanza. Merchants rejoice, their stocks selling out at record speed. Artisans find their skills in high demand. The city hums with a new level of commercial energy. Money, or rather gold, circulates with dizzying speed. But then, a subtle, creeping change begins. The price of everyday goods, bread, dates, oil, cloth, starts to inch upwards. Then it gallops. This is the unavoidable economic punchline to Mansa Musa's epic spending spree. A historical fact recorded by contemporary chroniclers like Al-Umari is that the sheer volume of gold Mansa Musa poured into Cairo's economy caused its value to plummet. For more than a decade, they said, the gold market in Cairo was depressed. Its basic supply and demand when a commodity, even one as precious as gold, suddenly becomes overwhelmingly abundant. Its purchasing power drops. Suddenly, your average loaf of bread in Cairo started costing what a small donkey cart might have fetched a few months prior. Thanks. Mansa Musa. Hope you enjoyed that slightly more expensive pigeon pie. For the wealthy merchants who sold goods to the Malians at inflated prices, it was a windfall. But for ordinary Cairenes, the ones living on fixed incomes or small wages, this inflation was a serious hardship. Their savings bought less. Their daily expenses soared. The golden touch of the Malian king, while dazzling, also had an unintentional and rather disruptive economic bite. Historians still argue whether Mansa Musa fully understood the inflationary consequences of his largesse in Cairo, or if his primary aim was an unparalleled display of piety and imperial power, with economic impact being a secondary concern. Was he simply a devout and generous king? Perhaps a little naive about the complex financial mechanisms of a city like Cairo? Or was the economic disruption a calculated, if collateral, part of demonstrating Mali's earth-shattering wealth, a way of saying, we have so much gold, we can literally alter its value in the greatest city in the world. Some accounts suggest that on his return journey, years later, Mansa Musa, having heard of the inflation he caused, attempted to rectify the situation by borrowing back gold from Cairene merchants at exorbitant interest rates, effectively taking some of it out of circulation. It's a complex picture. You can almost imagine Mansa Musa's shopping list during this period, scribbled on a piece of papyrus by a slightly overwhelmed scribe. Item 1. Blessings from the Sultan cost several camel loads of gold. Item 2. Rare books for Timbuktu Library cost a king's ransom, but in a good way. Item 3. Souvenirs for 60,000 people cost, don't ask. Just keep the camels coming. Item 4. 5 master architects, a dozen university scholars, and all the finest Egyptian linen you can find cost whatever is left in that other caravan of gold. The ripples of this golden flood spread far beyond Cairo. News of the Malian king and his incredible wealth traveled along the trade routes, carried by merchants and pilgrims to every corner of the Islamic world and even into Europe. This journey, and particularly the economic earthquake it triggered in Cairo, firmly placed Mali and its golden king on the medieval world map. It wasn't long before European cartographers, like those who created the famed Catalan Atlas of 1375, began to depict a regal African king in the heart of West Africa, holding a massive gold nugget. That image, that legend, was born in no small part from the stories that billowed out of Cairo during these heady months. The city, while perhaps nursing a bit of an economic hangover, would never quite forget the time the king of Mali came to visit, opened his treasury, and, for a while, changed everything. And you, having witnessed this extraordinary period, prepare for the next, most sacred leg of the journey, the pilgrimage to Mecca itself. The echoes of Cairo's bustling markets and the clinking of rapidly devaluing gold coins begin to fade as your immense caravan turns southward, then east, embarking on the next, profoundly sacred leg of this epic undertaking. The destination, the Hejaz, the Holy Land of Islam, and the cities of Medina and Mecca. This leg of the journey, while perhaps not as brutally desolate as the deep Sahara crossing, presents its own challenges: arid plains, rugged hills, and the ever-present need for water and supplies for your 60,000-strong mobile city. The anticipation within the caravan, however, is different now. It's less about the worldly wonders you've just experienced and more about an inner, spiritual yearning, a collective heartbeat quickening as you approach the very epicenter of your faith. Your first major stop in the Hejaz is Medina, the radiant city, the place where the Prophet Muhammad sought refuge, established his community, and where his earthly remains lie. As you approach, a palpable sense of reverence descends upon the travelers. Mansa Musa, the mighty emperor who commanded such vast wealth and manpower, now assumes the demeanor of a humble pilgrim. You see him leading prayers, his voice filled with emotion, and distributing alms to the city's needy, perhaps with a touch more caution than in Cairo. The economic lessons learned there not entirely forgotten. He, like you and everyone else in the caravan, spends time in the Prophet's mosque, Al-Masjid an-Nabawi, a place of profound peace and spiritual power, offering prayers and reflections. Then comes the final stretch to Mecca. As you draw closer to the most sacred city in Islam, you and all the other pilgrims enter a state of ihram. This is a ritual consecration, where worldly distinctions are set aside. You shed your fine robes, your dusty travel clothes, your symbols of status, and don two simple, seamless white garments. After months of travel, everyone changing into those simple white ihram garments must have been a relief. Finally, a dress code even a king can't overthink. Though trying to keep them pristine white during all the rituals, especially after a desert trek. Good luck with that. In ihram, you abstain from worldly vanities. No perfumes, no hunting, no quarreling. The focus is entirely on the spiritual. And then, Mecca. The moment you first lay eyes on the Kaaba, the simple, black, cube-shaped structure at the heart of the Masjid al-Haram is one that words can scarcely capture. A wave of emotion, awe, joy, humility, gratitude washes over you. This is it, the Qibla, the direction Muslims worldwide face in prayer, the house built by Abraham and Ishmael. For Mansa Musa, this must have been the culmination of a lifelong dream, the spiritual zenith of his incredible journey. You watch him, the great Mansa, now just one among millions of pilgrims, his eyes fixed on the Kaaba, his lips moving in silent prayer. The days that follow are a whirlwind of deeply symbolic Hajj rituals. You perform the tawaf, circumambulating the Kaaba 7 times, part of a vast, swirling sea of humanity, all chanting, Labbaika Allahumma labbaik, here I am, O God, at your command. You perform the sa'i, hurrying 7 times between the small hills of Safa and Marwa, reenacting Hagar's desperate search for water for her son Ishmael. It's quite a bit of exercise. After crossing the Sahara, you'd think Mansa Musa and his crew would be like, more walking seriously. But this was spiritual cardio, with a totally different, uplifting vibe. Then come the core days of Hajj, spent in the plains and hills outside Mecca, a day of prayer and supplication on the plain of Arafat. The spiritual climax of the Hajj, an overnight stay at Muzdalifah, collecting pebbles, and then the symbolic stoning of the devil at Mina, followed by the sacrifice of an animal, marking Eid al-Adha, the Feast of Sacrifice. It's a historical fact that the Hajj pilgrimage, then as now, was a powerful unifying force in the Islamic world, bringing together people of vastly different cultures, languages, and ethnicities in a shared expression of faith. Mansa Musa, the Emperor of Mali, stands shoulder to shoulder with pilgrims from Persia, India, Andalusia, and Anatolia, all brothers and sisters in faith. Throughout his time in Mecca and Medina, Mansa Musa continued his acts of generosity, founding charitable endowments and giving lavishly to the Sharif of Mecca and other notables, as well as to the poor. Historians still argue about the extent to which Mansa Musa's lavish spending in Mecca and Medina had a similar inflationary effect as in Cairo. As accounts are less detailed on this specific economic outcome in the Hejaz, though his expenditures were undeniably colossal. He also used his time to engage with leading Islamic scholars and jurists, deepening his own knowledge and undoubtedly seeking out learned individuals who might be persuaded to return with him to Mali. You can bet some of Mansa Musa's entourage, inspired by the spiritual and intellectual atmosphere, were eyeing up the best prayer mats, scholarly texts, and perhaps even trying to get a vial of genuine Zamzam water. Indeed, a quirky tidbit about Hajj souvenirs from that era and still today is the immense value placed on water from the well of Zamzam, believed to be divinely generated. Forget gold for a moment. A pious scholar might have been more thrilled with a rare manuscript acquired in the Meccan book markets. As the rituals conclude, a sense of profound peace and spiritual fulfillment settles over your group. Mansa Musa has done it. He has completed the Hajj, fulfilling one of the most sacred duties of his faith. He has stood before God as a humble servant, his earthly power and wealth secondary to his spiritual devotion. The soul's purpose for this part of his life has been met. Now, with hearts full and spirits renewed, the thoughts of the weary pilgrims, including their great Mansa, begin the slow turn westward, towards the long, long journey home. The sacred rites are complete, the spiritual batteries recharged, and a profound sense of accomplishment settles over you and the 60,000 souls who've shared this incredible journey to Mecca. But the call of home, the distant thrum of the Mali Empire, now pulls strongly. With hearts full of prayer and minds buzzing with new experiences, Mansa Musa gives the order it's time to turn west. Leaving Mecca is a bittersweet affair. You cast lingering glances back at the Kaaba, the spiritual anchor you journeyed so far to reach, an image that will forever be etched in your mind. Yet, there's also a new energy, a sense of purpose renewed not just by religious fulfillment, but by the exciting prospect of bringing back a different kind of treasure. For Mansa Musa isn't just returning with memories and a lighter gold reserve, he's bringing back intellectual capital. During his time in Cairo and the Hejaz, he wasn't just sightseeing and distributing largesse, he was talent spotting. You see new faces in the caravan now, scholars with thoughtful eyes and ink-stained fingers, architects clutching scrolls of drawings, poets whose minds are already crafting verses about the journey, and jurists with deep knowledge of Islamic law. Perhaps the most famous of these new recruits is a man named Abu Ishaq Ibrahim as-Sahili, a poet and architect hailing from Al-Andalus, Moorish Spain. It's a significant historical fact that Mansa Musa's recruitment of individuals like as-Sahili would have a transformative impact on West African scholarship, art, and particularly architecture, especially in cities like Timbuktu. Packing for the trip home must have been interesting. Right. Where did I put that armful of priceless manuscripts? And did anyone remember to pack the famous architect we picked up in Mecca? Don't want to leave him at a rest stop. This is the wisdom gained, not just for Mansa Musa personally, though you can imagine his worldview has been immeasurably broadened, but for the entire empire. He's seen how other great Islamic states are administered, the flourishing of their universities, the beauty of their mosques. He's bringing back ideas for governance, for education, for urban development, for a richer, more cosmopolitan Mali. The Hajj, for him, became an imperial recruitment drive and an intensive course in state-of-the-art Islamic civilization. Imagine the HR department for Mansa Musa's return trip. Okay, new hires from Mecca and Cairo. Welcome aboard. Your benefits package includes sand, more sand, and the distinct possibility of meeting interesting desert wildlife. Oh, and all the gold you can. Well, you know. The initial stages of the return journey feel familiar, yet different. You retrace your steps, at least partially, likely heading back towards Egypt. The caravan, though still a colossal entity, feels changed. The spiritual fervor of approaching Mecca has been replaced by a more subdued, reflective mood, mixed with the weariness of already having traversed thousands of miles. And there's a new, pragmatic concern: finances. After the legendary spending in Cairo and the Hejaz, the imperial treasury, while by no means empty, is considerably lighter. The gold that flowed like a river is now more of a well-managed stream, and this will present its own set of challenges soon enough. Logistically, the desert remains the desert, an unforgiving, demanding environment. The sun is just as hot, the nights as cold, the search for water as critical. Morale needs to be carefully managed. These are travelers who have been on the road for well over a year now. They miss their homes, their families. The wear and tear on equipment, on animals, on human bodies is significant. Historians still argue about the exact terms and motivations for scholars like As-Sahili accompanying Mansa Musa back to Mali. Whether it was purely financial incentive, some sources say As-Sahili was promised a fortune. A quirky fringe tidbit being that he received something like 40,000 to 200,000 mithqals of gold, genuine intellectual curiosity, or a degree of diplomatic persuasion on Musa's part. Whatever the reason, their presence signifies a new chapter. Beyond the human cargo of talent, you're also laden with tangible mementos, crates filled with precious books, treatises on Islamic jurisprudence, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and poetry are carefully guarded. There are rare textiles, intricate scientific instruments, maybe even seeds of new crops or plans for innovative irrigation techniques observed in Egypt. These aren't just souvenirs, they are seeds of change, ready to be planted in Malian soil. Each pilgrim carries their own treasures to a prayer mat from Mecca, a string of tasbih beads, a small container of sacred Zamzam water, and, of course, memories that will last a lifetime, stories to be told and retold for generations. The caravan moves with a steady, if somewhat slower, pace. By this point, even the camels are probably like, "Are we there yet?" The initial wide-eyed excitement of the Grand Hajj has given way to that long car ride home with the family vibe, just with significantly more gold, or what's left of it, a larger contingent of international scholars, and fewer arguments over who gets to choose the music, mainly because iPods are still a good 6 centuries away. Each mile covered is a mile closer to home, a mile closer to seeing the fruits of this incredible journey begin to blossom. Mali awaits, and you are bringing back far more than you set out with. The satisfaction of spiritual duties fulfilled and the intellectual treasures packed amongst your baggage provide a certain warmth. But the road home is long, and the realities of a multi-year expedition are beginning to bite. Mali awaits, yes. But between here and there lies another vast expanse of desert, and your caravan, while still impressive, is undeniably leaner. The river of gold that once flowed so freely has dwindled to a determined trickle, and the consequences of that earlier, spectacular generosity are about to present themselves in a rather ironic fashion. As you once again approach the bustling metropolis of Cairo, it's not with the same triumphant, gold-showering fanfare as before. This time, Mansa Musa, the legend who single-handedly devalued gold in the region, finds himself in the rather awkward position of needing a loan. Yes, you heard that right. It's a well-documented historical fact, noted by chroniclers like Al-Umari and Ibn Khaldun, that on his return journey, Mansa Musa had to borrow considerable sums of money from Cairene merchants to finance the remainder of his voyage home. The man who had made gold cheaper now needed it badly. Imagine the scene: Mansa Musa, perhaps with a slightly sheepish expression, approaching the very same merchants he'd astounded with his wealth just a year or so prior. So, the guy who basically turned Cairo's gold market into a bouncy castle now has to go back and ask for a loan. Awkward. You can almost hear his financial advisor muttering, "I told you those solid gold toothpicks for the entire entourage were perhaps a tad excessive." This borrowing, likely at high interest rates, certainly added another layer to his already legendary status. A king so rich he could crash economies, and then so strapped he needed to take out medieval payday loans. With finances somewhat shored up, though undoubtedly with a new sense of fiscal caution, you turn your faces once more towards the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Sahara. If you thought the desert was tough on the way out, it's a whole different beast on the return. Familiarity doesn't breed contempt here, it breeds a weary respect for its harshness. You and your fellow travelers are already bone-tired. The animals are gaunt, their reserves depleted from months, even years, of relentless travel. Equipment, once new and sturdy, is now patched and worn. Sickness, an ever-present shadow, seems to find easier purchase among the weakened. Crossing the Sahara once is an epic achievement. Crossing it twice, when you're already exhausted and your Imperial Express card is maxed out. That's when you start deeply questioning your earlier life choices. Even the camels are probably fantasizing about a nice, cool mud bath somewhere far, far away from yet more sand. The new recruits. Those scholars and architects lured from afar by promises of royal patronage and the chance to shape a burgeoning empire, get a rather stark introduction to the realities of trans-Saharan travel. This part of the trip was probably not highlighted in their glossy recruitment brochure. Experience authentic desert living. Learn to barter priceless ancient manuscripts for a single water skin. It's character building, we promise. Their resilience, alongside that of every other soul in this slowly moving city, is tested daily. Historians still argue about the exact amount of debt Mansa Musa incurred on his return journey and the precise impact this had on the remainder of his reign and Mali's state finances. Was it a crippling burden, or a manageable expense for an empire still fundamentally wealthy from its gold mines? These trials, however, are also potent teachers. Mansa Musa, you can imagine, is learning profound lessons in logistics, economics, and perhaps even a touch of humility. The interconnectedness of far-flung markets, the real-world consequences of seemingly limitless spending, the importance of sustainable treasury management. These are not abstract concepts anymore. They are felt realities. There's a certain wisdom forged in adversity that triumph alone cannot provide. He's seeing firsthand the grit and endurance of his people, the loyalty of his soldiers, the quiet determination of the scholars who chose to follow him into this sandy crucible. A quirky, though unverified, tidbit one might imagine from this period is Mansa Musa himself having to pawn a particularly beloved, jewel-encrusted astrolabe he acquired in Alexandria, just to secure a few extra camels for the water rations. Such small, unrecorded sacrifices might have been numerous. Despite the dwindling resources and the crushing weariness, the caravan pushes relentlessly westward. The desire for home is a powerful magnet, pulling you across the dunes, over the rocky plateaus, through the shimmering heat. Mansa Musa's leadership is crucial here. He can no longer dazzle with mountains of gold, so he must inspire with his own fortitude, his unwavering faith, and the vision of the Mali they are returning to, a Mali that will be enriched not just by the memory of this Hajj, but by the knowledge and talent it's bringing back. The lessons learned are not just for the Mansa, they ripple through the entire caravan. You learn about your own limits, and then you learn how to push past them. You learn the true value of water, of shade, of a friendly face in the desolate expanse. Slowly, agonizingly, the landscape begins to change once more. The endless sea of sand starts to give way to sparse vegetation. The air, while still hot, carries a different scent, the promise of the Sahel, the familiar gateway to home. You are battered. You are bruised. Your resources are stretched thin, but you are not broken. The trials of this return journey have stripped away any remaining illusions, leaving behind a core of hard-won resilience. Mali is close. The golden journey is nearing its end, but its most lasting impacts are perhaps only just beginning to be understood. The air changes. It's subtle at first, a familiar scent on the wind, a recognizable curve of a distant hill, the way the light falls in the late afternoon. Then, unmistakably, you are home. You've crossed the invisible threshold back into the vast embrace of the Mali Empire. The relief is so profound, it brings tears to the eyes of hardened desert veterans. After years away, after the dust of Cairo, the sacred precincts of Mecca, the trials of the return, you are finally back on Malian soil. News of Mansa Musa's return, the great Haji king, spreads like wildfire. Villages erupt in celebration. Niani, the imperial capital, prepares a welcome fit for its triumphant ruler. A ruler who returns not just with spiritual authority, but with a vision that will reshape the empire's cultural and intellectual landscape. While Niani remains the heart of political power, Mansa Musa's gaze, and a significant portion of his resources, turns with keen interest toward cities like Gao and, most famously, Timbuktu. These urban centers, strategically perched on the life-giving arc of the Niger River, are vital hubs of trans-Saharan trade. But Mansa Musa now sees them as something more potential beacons of Islamic learning, scholarship, and architectural beauty, ready to rival the great cities he witnessed on his travels. He's fresh from his world tour, and basically decided Mali needed an extreme scholarly makeover. Less gold bling, more big brains, he probably declared, swapping some of his spending on shiny things for investing in very smart people. And who better to kickstart this transformation than the individuals he painstakingly recruited Abu Ishaq? Ibrahim as-Sahili, the Andalusian poet-architect, is given a royal commission and, presumably, a hefty budget. His task to beautify Timbuktu and other key locations, to build structures worthy of a great and pious empire. A well-established historical fact is that under Mansa Musa's patronage, and with As-Sahili's expertise, Timbuktu began its ascent into a legendary center of Islamic learning and distinctive architecture. As-Sahili, our star architect, probably took one look at the local building materials and was like, "Mud. You want me to build a grand mosque, a royal palace, with mud. Okay, challenge accepted." And then he proceeded to make mud, or rather, banko, adobe brick, look absolutely magnificent. You witness the construction of the Jingareber Mosque in Timbuktu, its towering earthen minaret becoming an iconic symbol of the city. As-Sahili, drawing on his own Andalusian heritage and adapting to local materials and climate, helps to further refine the unique Sudano-Sahelian architectural style. This style features striking, mud brick structures, often with wooden beams known as toron protruding from the walls, a quirky and practical tidbit, as these beams serve as built-in scaffolding for the annual replastering required after the rainy season. He also designed a royal audience chamber for Mansa Musa in Niani, and his influence spread. Other scholars, scribes, and jurists brought back from the Hajj begin to establish madrasas, schools and universities, centered around the city's mosques, most notably Sankore. Timbuktu, already a prosperous stop on the salt and gold routes, blossoms. Its reputation shifts. It's no longer just a place to trade commodities. It becomes a city where knowledge itself is the most prized possession. Libraries expand, filled with manuscripts painstakingly hand-copied by skilled scribes, texts on theology, Islamic law, fiqh, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, history, and poetry. Students flock to Timbuktu, not just from within the Mali Empire, but from across West and North Africa, eager to learn at the feet of renowned scholars. Historians still argue about the extent to which Timbuktu was already a significant learning center before Mansa Musa, versus how much of its golden age was directly and solely attributable to his specific post-Hajj initiatives. But there's no denying his reign marked a period of extraordinary flourishing. The atmosphere in Timbuktu becomes electric with intellectual fervor. You can almost hear the soft scratch of reed pens on parchment, the murmur of students reciting texts, the lively debates of scholars discussing fine points of jurisprudence under the shade of an acacia tree or within the cool, earthen walls of a mosque courtyard. Forget cryptocurrency. In Mansa Musa's Timbuktu, the real hot investment was books. You'd have scholars whispering in alleyways. Psst, got a rare first edition manuscript on advanced Aristotelian logic, translated into Arabic. I'll trade you 3 prime camels and a slightly used, but very accurate, astrolabe. The story goes that books became one of the most profitable items of trade in the city. Mansa Musa actively fosters this environment. He provides stipends for scholars and students, ensuring they can dedicate themselves to their studies without worldly anxieties. He commissions the copying of important texts and reportedly takes a keen personal interest in scholarly discussions. The wisdom gained on his Hajj, the exposure to the great learning centers of Cairo and Mecca, the interactions with leading minds of the Islamic world, is now being directly translated into imperial policy. He is building an empire not just of gold, but of intellect and faith. The dusty Ratotontor, remote city of Timbuktu, is steadily, surely, transforming into the pearl of the desert, a beacon of culture and learning whose reputation will echo down the centuries, long after the gold that funded its rise has been spent and respent. the scholarly dawn he envisioned is breaking, bathing the mud-brick towers of Timbuktu in a warm, intellectual light. That warm, intellectual light bathing Timbuktu, ignited by Mansa Musa's vision and fueled by the treasures of his pilgrimage, would burn brightly for centuries. It stands as perhaps the most enduring, tangible testament to his reign and that single, monumental journey. You've seen him transform from a powerful but perhaps regionally known king into a figure of global legend, a devout pilgrim, a challenged traveler, and finally, a nation builder whose influence would echo far beyond the borders of his vast empire. After his return from the Hajj around 1327, Mansa Musa continued to rule the Mali Empire for roughly another decade. Passing away around 1337 CE, he left behind an empire at its zenith, prosperous, peaceful, secure in its Islamic faith, and now increasingly renowned for its burgeoning centers of learning. The immediate impact of his golden journey was multifaceted. For Mali, it brought unparalleled international prestige, no longer some half-mythical kingdom of gold in the distant west. Mali was now recognized as a significant power in the Dar al-Islam, the Islamic world. The Hajj strengthened Islamic institutions within the empire, fostered a more literate and learned elite, and further integrated Mali into the wider cultural and economic currents flowing from North Africa and the Middle East. It's a significant historical fact that Mansa Musa's pilgrimage is one of the best documented events in medieval African history, thanks to contemporary Arab scholars like al-Umari, Ibn Khaldun, and later, Ibn Battuta, who visited Mali shortly after Musa's reign and recorded vivid accounts of the empire's wealth and his predecessor's legendary journey. Their writings have provided invaluable windows into this fascinating period. In West Africa, his legacy resonated deeply. Timbuktu, and to a lesser extent Gao, became magnets for scholars and students, their libraries filled with precious manuscripts, their mosques centers of vibrant theological and legal debate. The architectural style he championed, that distinctive Sudano-Sahelian aesthetic, continued to define the region's sacred and civic buildings for generations. His example of lavish patronage of the arts and sciences set a standard for future rulers. If you want to be remembered by history, apparently, the trick is to either A. invent something amazing, B. conquer a lot of places, or C. give away so much gold you accidentally break an entire country's economy for a bit. Mansa Musa kind of went for option C, with spectacular and surprisingly constructive style. But his mark extended far beyond Africa. The stories of his incredible wealth and the sheer scale of his Hajj rippled through the Islamic world and then into Europe. The most famous visual representation of this is found in the Catalan Atlas of 1375. There, in the section depicting West Africa, sits a regal figure, identified as Musa Mali, Lord of the Negroes of Guinea, holding a large golden orb. This image, directly inspired by the tales of his pilgrimage and the unimaginable quantities of gold he dispersed, cemented in the European imagination the idea of West Africa as an El Dorado, a land of inexhaustible riches. This, in turn, helped to fuel European interest in Africa, initially for its gold, and later for other, more tragic forms of exploitation. Historians still argue about the precise long-term economic effects of Mansa Musa's Hajj on the Mali Empire itself, whether the massive expenditure and subsequent debt ultimately strengthened it through enhanced trade and prestige, or subtly weakened its economic foundations over time. Why does this one king, this one journey, still capture our imagination 7 centuries later. It's the sheer audacity of it all. The numbers are staggering, the tens of thousands of people, the tons of gold, the thousands of miles. Mansa Musa basically set the gold standard for road trips. Your average modern billionaire flying private to an exclusive island amateur hour compared to this emperor and his 60,000 companions on a camel-powered, continent-spanning pilgrimage. It's the dramatic economic impact, literally changing the value of gold in major medieval cities. It's the tangible legacy in the baked mud mosques and libraries of Timbuktu. A somewhat speculative, quirky fringe idea is that Mansa Musa's massive injection of gold into Mediterranean economies might have, in some small, indirect way, contributed to the liquidity that helped fuel the Italian Renaissance. While a long shot, it makes you think about the interconnectedness of global economies. Even then, people today try to calculate Mansa Musa's wealth in modern dollars, and the numbers just get silly, breaking all known calculators. It's like trying to measure a supernova with a teaspoon. He wasn't just rich, he was rewrite economic history and build a scholarly utopia rich. His story is a potent blend of faith, ambition, immense wealth, cultural exchange, and lasting intellectual achievement. It reminds us that great empires and extraordinary individuals once flourished in parts of the world often overlooked by more conventional historical narratives. Mansa Musa's golden journey didn't just put Mali on the map, it etched an indelible mark on the consciousness of the world. And so, as the story of Mansa Musa's incredible pilgrimage draws to its close, feel the hustle and bustle of those ancient cities begin to soften. The sharp glint of gold gently dimming in your mind's eye, the clamor of the caravan, the fervent prayers in the holy cities, the quiet scratching of pens in Timbuktu's libraries. All these sounds begin to recede, like echoes fading across the vast, now quiet, desert sands. The weight of the journey, the heat of the sun, the endless miles you've traveled in your imagination can now be set down. Let the image of that great king, a man of immense faith and almost unimaginable wealth, who journeyed across continents and left an indelible mark on history, become a distant, peaceful thought. Allow the rhythm of your breathing to slow, to deepen as the narrative winds down, like a river reaching a calm and endless sea. The Sahara, once a place of toil and trial, now lies serene and still under a canopy of brilliant, silent stars, much like the ones that guided Mansa Musa and his people on their long journeys. There is nothing more to see for now, nothing more to do. Only the gentle easing into quietude. The story is told. The day, or the night, is done. Rest now, and let these echoes of a golden past lull you into a peaceful, well-deserved sleep.